Bhagavad Gita, Chapter 5, Communion through Renunciation. That is, work with detached attachment. In answer to Arjuna's doubt whether a life of action is better than that of contemplation, the Lord replies that both are equally valid paths. However, unless the path of dedicated and detached action is undertaken first, the second, that is the path of contemplation, characterized by abandonment of all actions, cannot happen. It will only lead to idleness and hypocrisy. Great importance is given to detachment or renunciation in action. Renunciation does not mean a life of denial or giving up things that are dear to you. It only means growing and to appreciate far more fulfilling avenues of enjoyment. It is an exhilarating confidence in the higher aspects of life. Again, it does not mean giving up of actions, but acting in a spirit of renunciation. This alone will lead you out of bondage to liberation, where you are not impaired by the BMI, that is, body, mind, and intellect. When good things come your way, enjoy it by all means, but do not develop a craving or an attachment towards it. Desires and cravings are man's greatest enemy. Learn to eliminate or at least reduce them in order to get back to your infinite stature and power. A person who is established in selfless and dedicated action, who is pure and whose mind and senses are under control, and whose self is identified with the self of all, he is never bound, says the Lord. Now, what is the best way to perform actions? The first and the most important point: remove the arrogance of ego from your actions. Do not be proud that I am doing this or I am doing that. Do not have the doership attitude. Just think for a moment. Can we even lift a finger by ourselves without the inner force or energy to empower it? Realize that we are only puppets, and realize that it is the Atman or the energy inside, the inner spirit, which is the source of all actions and which enlivens even the simplest of actions. And it is the vasanas, that is the inherent tendencies, that determine the nature of the actions. Constantly remember to attach yourself to the higher self, that is the Atman. Remember, we live in the body, but we are not the body. Even temporarily, if you switch from the body awareness to the mind awareness, like a student writing his last answer in his exam, or an artist deeply engrossed in his art, the physical pain becomes non-existent. Then, how much more beneficial would it be to attach ourselves to our real self, that is the Atman. Second point, dedicate your actions to something higher setting aside your selfish interests and desires. Be ever ready to serve. When you put someone or something ahead of you, it gives you tremendous power. The more self centered you are, the more will be the problem. A teacher, doctor, or a lawyer should focus on what is good for my students or patients or clients rather than how much money, how much fame will I make. This may be difficult initially, but it can be achieved with a steady determination. So, when you put someone ahead of you, maybe your student, it gives you a tremendous power. This is the law of nature that when you hold on to something higher, the lower automatically drops off. As seen in your own life. In childhood, the center of your attraction was toys. In youth, perhaps it was the iPhones and the cell phones and the laptops and of your friends, of course. In adulthood, money and power got hold of you. And in old age, spirituality. And then the money and power goes off or reduces. So you see, when you hold on to something higher, the lower automatically drops off. Thus, train yourself to constantly raise your actions to a nobler cause, a higher cause. Automatically, the lesser cause, that is the selfish and self-centered cause, will drop off. Third important point, do actions without clinging to a motive or reward. This has been repeatedly emphasized in the Bhagavad Gita. Learn to get fulfillment in doing an action just for the sake of doing the action. This is not an idealistic philosophy, but a very practical and beneficial one. Do an action for the sake of doing the action. Even your obligatory duties, do them with the attitude that that's what you ought to do. It has multiple benefits. Your concentration then is only on the action and will turn out certainly to be excellent because it has no worries about the rewards. It's not hampered by prejudices of the past or fears and expectations of the future. There is no dissipation of energy in negative thoughts or anxieties. Remember clearly that the fruit of your actions is never in your hands. It is always dependent on someone else. And that you have absolutely no control. Hence, there is bound to be disappointment and even frustration when your expectations are not satisfied by the others. By all means, fix a goal. Work to the best of your ability and let your conscience get the satisfaction. Work like an artist who just enjoys his work of art, be it painting, writing, singing, whatever. His work is his own reward. What matters then? How the world looks at it. That is why it is always said that do work for the sake of work without clinging to a motive or reward. Another important aspect in this chapter is the development of oneness with everyone. And this can happen only when you realize that you are a spark of the divine. By attaching yourself to the Atman principle in you, and after that, extending the same idea to all beings in creation. The last verse gives the prescription for liberation. It says, excluding all sense perceptions, fixing the look between the eyebrows, steadying the flow of prana and apana, that is, the outgoing and the incoming breath, through the nostrils, controlling the senses, mind, and intellect, devoid of desires, fear, and anger, the meditative sage attains liberation. Thus ends the 5th chapter, entitled Karma Sannyasa Yoga, that is, communion through renunciation. Hari Om Tat Sat.